say, Slim, look.
What's that,
We gonna take this here all the way from the Magnolia,
like
across
that,
Claiborne. You heard me?
Do it.
Now can I ball y'all? Or do they wanna see me crawl? Man, fuck all y'all. If y'all was waiting on my fall.
Welcome to Coaching Culinary. I'm Chef Jan. Today we have the legendary Macadone, No Limit Records. How you been doing, brother?
I'm cool. How y'all feeling out there?
Fresh off the road, literally off the road. And so I appreciate you making this pit stop. Where are you on your way to?
Well, we're headed to Raleigh, North Carolina for the Dreamville Festival, and from there we're headed to New York.
All right, so let's go back to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
As most people know, you went to jail for a crime that you didn't commit.
Right.
How were you able to maintain, frankly, your sanity while trying to appeal and finally get exonerated of a crime that you didn't commit?
The straight, honest answer is, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that there were things that I applied that helped me deal with it as I was fighting for my freedom. I never gave up. I never got content with being in prison. And I like to win, so I tried to put myself in position to do what it was I needed to do to win. And a win for a prisoner is freedom. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get bitter. Well, I initially did, but I got over that fast when I realized that wasn't gonna help me. So what I did was I had to remove my emotional attachment to the situation so that I can effectively help fight my case and get me up out of there.
So, and I think that's important for people to know because I mean, it was literally a crime that you didn't commit, and it wasn't some like a person got killed, rest in peace, and you had anything to do with it. You had nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it.
And you still got convicted. So that part had to have been just hard. But going before that, let's start with where you from and how'd you get involved with rap to get to No Limit?
Okay, so I'm from Uptown New Orleans. I started rapping when I was 7. I first heard rap music around 5 years old, and I didn't know what it was because at the time it was something different than the other stuff I heard on the radio. Mm-hmm. I fell in love with it, and I remember listening and watching a Culinary video by New Edition.
Yeah.
And at the end, Ralph had the little Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike, and I remember just thinking like, I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a kid. So me and my friend, my childhood friend, he was like, man, let's write a rap. And I was like, okay. It was like something almost like, let's go play basketball.
Yeah.
So we just sat down and we wrote a rap, and I remember just how free it made me feel. Mm-hmm. Because within those lines, I can be who I want to be. It transcended what I saw, it transcended the conditions or whatever.
Yeah.
It was my chance to just let my imagination, go. It was sort of like social media is right now.
Yeah.
You can just be who you want to be on social media.
Yeah.
Well, that's what hip hop did for me. I could just be who I want to be in the song.
That's great, man. So going from that, and New Orleans is so small, so people from that signed with Cash Man No Limit, y'all knew each other.
Yeah, me and BG grew up together. I've been knowing BG since he was probably about 6 or 7 years old.
So the first time I heard you was on the song with BG on his Chopper City album.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Well, at that time, me and my homegirl Storm were signed to a record label called Ionic. Mm-hmm. And on Ionic Records was at the top of Canal Place, and they had this state-of-the-art studio, and a lot of artists used to record there. But the studio was actually owned by the guy who owned our record label at the time. So I just so happened to be there. I used to go there, work on beats, write rhymes, and Cash Money was recording Chopper City in the main room. I was in like a pre-production room, and Doogie, well, the world know him as BG, but Doogie come in the room and he was like, man, I want you to check out this beat Fresh working on. And I came in there, I heard the beat, and he said, you got something for it? And I actually rapped a song called Cops and Robbers that I had already. Mm-hmm. And that's the actual, what people hear on Trouble is 2 of the verses from a song I already had called Cops and Robbers that I hadn't recorded yet.
Okay, did that, no, that was locked down on the Masterpiece soundtrack, The movie, the Body Body soundtrack. Okay.
So that was the first Lockdown.
Right.
And then I remixed Lockdown in 1999 and put it on World War III.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably the scariest song that I ever wrote in my life. Real talk, because I had a dream, and I woke up in the middle of the night and wrote the dream down. I had to be about 18 or 19 years old. I wrote the dream down, and then a couple days later, I don't know, for whatever reason, I can't attribute it to anything that I can consciously think of, but I just had the urge to write it in a rap form.
Right.
So I turned it into a rap, and I eventually recorded once I became a No Limit artist. Unbeknownst to me, that song would basically define the next 20-something years of my life. And everything that I wrote in that song eventually came true. And a lot of people over the years were like, man, you're like you like predicted it. I was like, you think I wanted to predict that? You got to be out of your mind.
Right.
I didn't want that to happen.
Right.
It just happened, Or maybe I subconsciously heard or knew something that I didn't consciously know.
And so, which I think is interesting, because when I first heard you, I thought you was from New York, because your style,
right.
Your style reminded me of Nas back then, if I'm being totally honest.
Yeah, and Nas was someone who I would listen to years, I think, down the line, and he was one of my favorites in the early '90s. But I would always give credit to Ra. I am a child of Rakim.
Right.
Without a doubt, through and through. And the reason I liked Nas was because he was cut from that same vein, you know what I mean? So that's where the style that I had originated from, Rakim. And I credit Rakim. I told him when I met him, like, Ra, you the reason I was a straight A student in school. He was like, word? I said, yeah, man. I said, because I used to listen to your songs at 12 or 13, go in that encyclopedia and try to figure out what you were talking about. Because I ain't want nothing to go over my head.
Right. When you did the song with BG, what I thought stood out was the storytelling was impeccable.
Appreciate it.
No problem, man. And so once you did that, how did it lead to you getting a deal with No Limit and Master P?
All right, so at that time I was hanging with Cash Money. I think Birdman was forming or trying out different formulas of different artists, because I think they had the idea to put a group together. And I was there around that time. So if you ever listen to the song that me and BG did, when it come on, I say Uptown Connect, give a nigga respect.
Yeah.
Because Uptown Connection was one of the names we was throwing around to start a group. Well, I eventually left and went with Cash Money, with No Limit. Juvenile would come like right around that time, because I think he debuted on Chopper City too.
Yeah.
And I think that was the perfect fit for what Fresh and them was trying to put together. So it almost like it worked out for all of us.
Right.
I just so happened to leave and go sign with No Limit. Juvie just so happened to come around, and then you have one of the biggest hip hop groups in history, the Hot Boys.
So now what exactly was your connect with No Limit? How did they get a hold of you?
I actually did a song with Cain and Abel, I think first. Cain and Abel or Mia, I did first. And P heard it and he paid me. P gave me my first check. I had been rapping since 1984, professionally since 1989. But I didn't get my first actual check for rapping until I signed with No Limit, or before I signed with No Limit, was from P when I did the feature for Cain and Abel. And so it was a no-brainer for me. A lot of people was telling him about my talent. Obviously, Mia, Kel, my cousin Skanu, rest in peace, who was with the group Prime Suspects. I don't even think I looked at the contract P gave me when I signed it, because I'm like, yo, I've been rapping all these years and I never got paid. And this dude paid me for a verse. This was before I even signed with him.
Right.
So then I did another feature with Mia, got another check.
So from there, once you kind of got in the mix, what I noticed, your style was just totally different, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
To me, your style was more intricate. You were great at storytelling. You were more lyrical. You just stood out from the rest of the No Limit camp.
That was on purpose.
Why is that?
Well, one part of the reason I signed with No Limit is because I didn't see anyone there that sounded like me. And I didn't sound like anybody. And I wanted to stick out like a sore thumb.
And so at the time you went to jail, were you with No Limit then? Or
Yeah, yeah.
And then, so how was the reception when you got out? Like, did you just jump back in the fold with them? Or how was it when you got out?
Yeah, everything was cool. When I got out, the first thing I did when I got out, as far as music is, I played the jazz fest with Mia X. I actually played the bass for her and I rapped. So she asked me, I put together a band for her. I played the bass in the band, and then she asked me to perform, and I did that. And I went home and was about to lay down and go to sleep, but then P called and was like, man, I need you to come to this birthday bash for something he had in the Smoothie King, and I went and did that. But I jumped on the No Limit reunion tour shortly after I got home. And I came front like the first 2 or 3 shows, my energy was different. It was like sensory overload.
Yeah.
You know, coming from being in a dorm where you see the same people every day and everything is kind of programmed to be a certain way, to going on stage and there's 20,000 people screaming.
Right.
So it took me like the 3rd show. By the 3rd show, I was okay. The first 2, I was just kind of, man, this is a lot. You know what I mean?
So, adjusted to the stage life, how has it been adjusting to like the new norm of being famous in this environment with social media? Like you said, you kind of created who you are now online. How has that been adjusting to that?
In many ways, the adjustment has been seamless. In other ways, I'm still adjusting. You know, one of the things I had to get accustomed to was I was loud. When I got out, you know, I would talk and my wife would just be like, "You're loud," right? Everywhere we went. And I didn't really understand what she was saying until I had to think about, man, when you're in a dorm in prison, there's 100 guys in the dorm. So when you're talking to someone, you're talking loud because you got to talk over all of the voices that's in the dorm. And that's an adjustment I had to make, just being in society. I had to learn how to calm myself down. Social media was like, I guess like jumping in an ice tub, a tub full of ice. Right. Because it was something different. That didn't exist when I left the streets.
Yeah, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors with social media, and it's really hard to navigate sometimes. But I think you're doing a pretty good job. I mean,
I'm learning thanks to my #1 hater and wife right there.
Yeah. And she's also your PR person?
Yeah.
So shits up everything.
Yeah, she pretty much helped me adjust to this new everything. Man, I felt like a dinosaur. I'll tell you, no word of a lie. I walked out of that place and was looking around like everybody is sitting at their dinner table like this.
On the phone, yeah.
I'm like, what is this? I went in the restaurant, I'm like, what's wrong with these people? So, you know, we're talking about we're talking about 21 years. I didn't have no gray hair. I didn't have none of this. So this was a totally different world when I walked out.
I mean, you know, I'm not gonna tell my age, but I listened to you heavily back in those days. And even your World War III album is actually my favorite album.
That's because you're from New Orleans. See, a lot of people from New Orleans, they took to World War III more because World War III, I think, was a little more introspective.
It was more introspective, you're right.
And honestly, I was depressed. I didn't know it at the time, you know, but when I started learning about depression when I was incarcerated, I was like, oh, so that's what I was dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But some of the most intense and beautiful works of art comes out of depression, to be honest with you. And I didn't know that I was depressed at the time. I just knew something I didn't feel right. You know, as a kid, I had this dream that, man, if I get this money, I can get my family out of what at the time seemed like our #1 issue, and that was money. Right. We moved everywhere. My parents had 6 kids, you know, and shout out to my parents, America. My parents been married right now for 49 years.
Congratulations.
49 years. But they had so many kids, so we was always struggling. My dad, you know, worked. My mother somebody had to be home to take care of those kids because, you know, it was a lot of us. So the deal they made was my mother had to quit working, had to take care of the kids while daddy worked, right? So with that being said, it's like the problems that I saw them face was money. So in my head, I get this money, we good. Then I got the money. And I still felt empty. And I didn't understand why. And I learned a valuable lesson. What I learned was that at least the poor man has the hope that money will make him happy, right? At least he have that, because that gives him motivation, right?
Right.
But you see what happened to these rich dudes that ain't happy? You see what they do? They either get on drugs or they blow their brains out, because I mean, they got everything they can possibly want, and
doesn't fill that void though.
yeah, and it's weird. So I didn't know that I was dealing with that, you know? So that's what World War III was a product of.
That's my favorite, man. So what'd you call your wife just now? You called her your number one op? What'd you call her?
My wife is, first of all, I love my wife. She is
all in fun,
my biggest supporter, but she the ops. She is a straight up
Why
hater.
you call her that,
She
man?
is my number one hater. And when I tell you nobody can hate on me like my wife, she is the number one hater.
That sounds like love to me. So how long have you guys been together? And how'd you meet?
We met in 2014. We got married in 2018. See, Murder was actually my best man because we were in prison together.
That's crazy.
And yeah, so we've been together since 2014.
So while all this traveling, I know you get hungry. So
Yeah.
what are some things that you like to eat?
Which brings me back to why my wife is the number one hater. So my wife is allergic to seafood.
Oh.
I'm from New Orleans. That's not good. So I have to like leave out the house to eat shrimp. You know, I gotta duck the hater to go eat shrimp, crawfish, any kind of fish. I gotta go duck off from the ops.
I never been more scared in the interview than right now, but go ahead. We can keep going.
But yeah, so I think, you know, I'm from New Orleans, so of course I like shrimp. Shrimp is like my favorite thing.
Okay.
I actually like it more than crawfish. Shrimp is, man, I remember one time hearing that shrimp was bad for you. And I really wanted to hurt the person who said that. I was like, no, don't do me that. Because I love shrimp.
No, like with anything, if you have it in moderation, it's good for you. Because you can even have pizza from time to time. You can't have it 2-3 times a week. But once every few weeks, that's not going to hurt nobody.
Yeah.
So how about we do this? How about we go to the kitchen? You like seafood. Let's do a shrimp and lobster pasta.
Oh, let's roll.
I think you do that. You
A
wanna do it?
shrimp and pasta, lobster pasta.
And before we go, I see you rocking the Jet Life. Where this comes? This I didn't see this on the website. This is nice.
America, that's all I'm gonna do. Yeah, shout out to Spitter, to Musa. The Jets, baby.
Yeah, we'll definitely tag them on this. There's some nice merchandise. So we're gonna head to the kitchen cam. Chef Jayon, Mac, Culture Culinary. We'll be right back.